Why did Leia herself say that there was absolutely no way that she could have redeemed Vader? And why would it have been disastrous if she had been in Luke's place on the second Death Star? Greetings, Acolytes, and welcome back to the archives. When Luke rushes off to face Vader on Cloud City, Yoda and Obi-Wan stated that there was another hope should Luke fail, but as we find out, they were wrong. As the story of Return of the Jedi reaches its conclusion, it becomes clear that the only way that Luke was able to triumph over Vader, the Emperor, and the dark side as a whole was through the power of love. Luke stoking the conflict within his father so that he could fulfill his destiny as the Chosen One was the entire crux of the victory. It was either that, or Luke died, or worse, became like his father. These were the defined roads clearly laid out from the very beginning. But if Leia had been there instead, raised on Alderaan, then trained by the Jedi Masters as Luke was, according to the recording made by Leia herself, it would have been a terrible idea, and Leia admitted that there was no way that she could have brought Vader back to the light. So how can it be that the daughter of Darth Vader, who should have been able to remind him of his own wife, was predestined to fail at that mission? Well, it's time to open a holocron and find out why. It has often been speculated whether or not Leia could have done what Luke did, or if she might have even had the capacity to defeat Vader and the Emperor if given proper training. This is not going to be a what-if scenario type exploration of if Leia was trained as a Jedi, but rather, the video is an explanation of why she would have utterly failed where Luke succeeded, and it has nothing to do with Leia's power or skill, but everything to do with the state of her heart. As Dave Filoni explains, Luke's powers in the Force was what brought him to that table, but it was his choice to throw away his lightsaber, his choice to forgive his father, that was ultimately what saved Darth Vader and the galaxy by proxy. But is that to say that Leia doesn't have a good heart? By no means am I trying to say that, just that she herself admits that at that point in time in Return of the Jedi, Leia was not in the place to be able to forgive Vader or believe that there was any good within him. Now let's read what Leia says regarding the entire event and Vader's turn after she hears of it from Luke. In an effort to locate Alliance headquarters, Vader had tortured me. Do I think he would have done so had he known I was his daughter? Yes, and in a heartbeat. Whether he would have tried to lure me to the dark side, or just induce pain, I can only imagine. But given how he dealt with Luke on Cloud City, there was nothing stopping him from harming his own children. And yet, Luke believed that there was still some good in him, just as my mother, as revealed by the old recordings, believed. And after Vader had tried to strangle her no less, it was beyond difficult for me to believe any goodness could be found within that black armor, even after I'd learned from Anakin's surviving friends about what he'd been like, how he had been a boy on Tatooine. And yet, some goodness did remain within Anakin. Luke had succeeded where others had failed. I have no illusions that I could have helped save Anakin from the dark side. Only Luke could have done that. I wasn't strong enough, at least not then. Ironically, Luke actually takes more from Padme's own heart, being one who distinctly believes in the inherent good of all people. They have that hopeful belief that deep down, anyone has the capacity for good. They just need to realize it. Leia, though, is more like Anakin, which is more pragmatic and a way of looking at things. She doesn't choose to look at the heart of beings, but rather what their actions say. If their actions prove them to be good and trustworthy, then they are to be allied with and helped. If not, then they needed to be destroyed in this time of war. But in all honesty, we cannot actually fault Leia for thinking this way at all, especially about Lord Vader. Luke grew up far away on Tatooine from the conflict of the Great Galactic War, while the planet was under Imperial occupation, and Luke mentioned that he hated the Empire and supported the rebellion. He was still wanting to join an Imperial academy if it meant that he got to leave the Sand World. He also wasn't too keen on getting involved, believing the entire war was just too big for him. He was quite far removed from the atrocities committed by Vader and the Empire. But Leia, by contrast, was in the thick of the whole war. As the daughter of the rebel leader undercover in the Imperial Senate, Leia's life was nothing but secrets and subterfuge. Leia had to stand by and watch the Empire's xenophobia hurt billions of innocent non-humans. Their militaristic oppression weighed heavy on the galaxy. Their unfair excuse for a justice system constantly screwed over civilians that were just trying to live their lives, all while having to maintain cover as an Imperial loyalist. Leia was intimately close to the inner workings of the Empire, seeing how harshly they dealt with rebel cells, her own friends, and how they ravaged beautiful planets for its resources. And not only does all of that barely scratch the surface of the Empire's sins, but we haven't even started talking about the sins of Vader. Leia was acutely aware of Vader's reputation. how he was cruel even to his allies and barbaric to his enemies. Even though this recording was made in Legends, we know in canon that in Rogue One, all of Leia's men were slaughtered like animals at Vader's blade, just because of the Death Star plans. Not only were many of Leia's friends killed, but she recalls how she herself was taken and tortured by Vader. But even after all of her bravery and commitment to the rebels, her good deeds continued to go punished by the Dark Lord when she stood by when Alderaan was obliterated. Alderaan was a peaceful and a gorgeous world with a pacifist society, one that relished in the arts and music. Despite Bail Organa being a rebel leader and having many alliance meetings on the planet itself was largely unaware of his affiliation, their ignorance being for their protection. All in all though, Vader had allowed the destruction of not only an innocent and undefended world, but by all accounts, a planet still loyal to the Empire. It's easy to judge Leia for being cold-hearted towards Anakin after he became a Force ghost and he tried to reach out to her, but it would have taken a while before she could reconcile with her own father and realizing that Anakin and Vader were different people. And even then, she still couldn't fathom how Luke saw any good within Vader. The recording that we just read from was made sometime around 40 ABY, 4 decades after all of this occurred, and Leia was still emotional after Darth Vader's redemption. Despite coming to terms with everything, there was a part of Leia's heart that cannot and will not let go of what Vader himself and the Emperor did. In order to actually move on, Leia had to rationalize Anakin and Vader as 2 separate people, forgiving one and continuing to condemn the other. This is what Leia said. "It disturbs me to have such a violent family history. I can forgive Anakin Skywalker because he could not prevent himself from being seduced by the dark side and transformed by Palpatine. The actions of Darth Vader and the Emperor, however, can never be forgiven." So what would happen if Leia were on the Death Star instead of Luke? If she wouldn't have been destroyed outright in the final duel, she would have certainly been seduced by the dark side. When trying to seduce Luke, Palpatine cleverly used his righteous anger towards the Empire's actions to stoke the boy into a rage, followed by Vader prodding about his sister. Luke did indeed fly into a fury and nearly fell to the dark side. If it had come that close with Luke, it would have been much easier with Leia. She wouldn't have hesitated to kill Vader during their duel, believing she had to rid the galaxy of the great evil. Unbeknownst to her though, it would have started her down the path to the dark side. The act of vengeance, no matter how noble, came from a place of hatred, and therefore would have put her within the darkness inherently. Sidious would have been able to manipulate that and bring her fully over to the Sith. She would have been lost forever, and the galaxy would have been doomed, as Leia became the very thing that she hated her entire life. But of course that scenario is not certain. However, what is assured is that Leia wouldn't have the heart to believe that there was good in Vader, enough to sway him back to the light. And in the end, whether Vader lived or died by Leia's hand, the result would have still been the same. The galaxy would be without the Chosen One, and the prophecy would go unfulfilled as Vader never became Anakin. But tell us friends, what do you think about this? Had you ever wondered what it would be like if Leia were in Luke's position? And did you ever think that she had the capacity to bring Vader back to the light? Let us know your thoughts and comments on this down below. And as always my friends, may the Force be with you.